Okay, and welcome to what is hopefully the first in a set of videos regarding basics to our LARP. This is for the Omaha Underworld LARP that takes place in Omaha, Nebraska and surrounding areas. We are using the Mind's Eye Theater rules for werewolf and vampire, published by Night Studios. That is the core rule set. We do have some homebrew rules attached to that. Feel free to take what you need from this video, whatever helps you kind of piece together the different things that we're going to go over in various subjects on each video. But first, we'll get started today with Downtime Actions. I'm the storyteller of the LARP, or I guess I should say LARPs. We have two of them. We have a vampire LARP and a werewolf LARP, both taking place in the same setting. We have games once a month, and those are all posted on Facebook so that we can organize that way. So, without further ado, we're going into Downtime Actions here. So, and the reason I decided to start with Downtime Actions is because it's probably the biggest, rule set that impacts players, especially new players, right away. So, why are Downtime Actions important? They move the story ahead. So with us having game once a month for each given venue, you're talking about it in a year, 12 game sessions. And, anybody who's played a tabletop role-playing game before knows that the story, if you have a story that takes place over 12 sessions, that's not a huge amount of story. Especially if you're doing like a 4-hour session like we do. In a theater LARP like this, there's so many players, so many moving parts. You may not quite get the attention that you would get in a tabletop role-playing game because the ratio of storyteller to players is way, way different. In a tabletop game, you may have 4 players and 1 GM. We're in a LARP currently in our game for our vampire game. I'm the one storyteller, and we're ranging at about 15 players right now. So, as a result, a lot of your character's agenda and personal goals will be handled through Downtime Actions. So it's your ability to move the story forward and to be able to do things that you want to do, keeping in mind that the storyteller is still reading your Downtime Actions, taking them into account, and trying to integrate them into the story. And it has a very good potential of blossoming into its own plot and its own storyline. At least that's what I like to do for my players. It is some work. It is some bookkeeping, both on the storyteller side and the player side. But personally, I've been LARPing for 20-ish years, and Downtime Actions are a great way to move your story forward, kind of see your story unfold and impact the setting and the characters, both players and NPCs. But the possibilities are endless with Downtime Actions. Sometimes I really get surprised and excited when I see a player come up with some really interesting Downtime Actions that really kind of shed the spotlight on other parts of the city and other parts of the world of darkness that maybe I had not even thought of before. So they can be a lot of fun, and it can help you kind of move the story along for yourself. So as far as downtime descriptions, so you can see the downtimes in both books. So the Vampire the Masquerade book, it's on page 307. for the By Night Studios book. For Werewolf, it's on page 387. They're pretty much the same. They're just customized for each setting. So you can read through that if you want more details and descriptions. But we'll get started here on those. So with Downtime Actions, most characters get, as the book here will show, all characters get 3 Downtime Actions for each period of time between sessions of the Chronicle. So that's the core amount that every character gets. And it doesn't seem like a lot, but there are ways to bump that up. There are certain merits and certain other abilities that might give you additional Downtime Actions. And those are sprinkled out throughout the various sections of the book. But the main way is using the computer skill. So I love how they've integrated technology and all the wonderful things you can do nowadays through the use of computers into the game. So your character can get stuff done online that may not necessarily have been possible, back in the 90s, back in the 80s, when you actually had to go somewhere, fill out paperwork or go get something done. So for every dot of computer skill your character has, you get an additional Downtime Action. And most skills range from 1 to 5 dots. So that's a good way to supplement that, so your character can get more accomplished in between that month from one game to the other. So it gives a general description here saying that you should be able to describe your downtime in a single sentence. That's not a hard and fast rule. By all means, feel free to make it a little longer if you need to. I've had players give me like a paragraph before of detailing specifically what precautions they're taking when they're doing an action. So it kind of just depends on your style and your writing style. Other people just give me bullet points with maybe half a phrase saying, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. So however you want to get it done. So now we'll get into the different types of Downtime Actions. And the book itself has a few examples, but by no means is that the limitation. Is that all you can do? You can always submit a Downtime Action. If you don't know what category it falls into or what type of action it is, just write out what your character wants to do. Then it's up to the storyteller to figure out how that's going to get incorporated into the story and how to respond to that. So first we're going to start with crafting. So crafting is just what it says. You're creating an object, you're building something, you're repairing something. And when you write the Downtime Action, you don't have to put crafting / whatever. You could just say, I want to fix my character's car because it got damaged in a high-speed chase last game. That's simple. But it allows you to create items as well. Say your character has an old 1960s muscle car that they want to upgrade and revamp and get it restored. You can do that as well. And by default, we then jump over to the equipment system, which will be in another video. But you can then build an equipment card to represent that vehicle so you know what traits it has. It may require a challenge in order to do it based on your character. So the example we gave of restoring the car, it would probably be your character's mental skill or physical, depending. That would be up to the storyteller. Mental, in my case, I'd probably say mental plus the craft skill. And then you would do a test against a set difficulty. I would say restoring an old muscle car like that might be a difficulty of 7 or 8. We'll test against that at game, and we'll see if you succeeded. If you did, well, then we'll give you the item card. If you did not, then you're going to have to give it another try in the future. Werewolves, for example, do have magical items known as fetishes that they can craft, and those are a little more complicated. They may have to go on a spirit quest to go find a spirit that they can put into the item to imbue it with power. That's going to be a little more complex. Maybe take a couple challenges to do that. But that gives you a brief idea of what crafting can do. So then we get to the next one. For vampires in the vampire book here, which is what we're looking at, they have feeding. So vampires obviously have to feed on feed on blood. Some of them feed off animals, depending on what their requirements are. So with feeding, so a vampire will come to game, and if they took a downtime action to feed, they will start at their full blood capacity. And different vampires of different generations have different capacities. So a neonate vampire can have up to 10 blood points. If you spent one of your downtime actions to feed, you will begin at full blood. If you do not spend a downtime action to feed, you will come in at half blood, so you only have 5 blood in your pool as opposed to 10. And that may require you to then go feed at game session. And of course, that all depends on your predator type. And we'll cover that later as well, but that's in the primer for our game as well, so if you want those details. So it says here that vampires with the herd background, which means you have humans that allow you to willingly feed off of them, you can expend a level of that background instead of using one of your downtime actions to feed. The next one is investigation. So investigation is probably the most widely used one. This allows you to investigate a lead. So say you're investigating some mystery or some creature that you encounter and you're trying to figure out more about it. You can use investigation to research things. You can look into a lead. You can try to uncover information. And for you as a player and your character, it probably makes more sense to approach it from their standpoint. So I had one player who, in our werewolf game, as an example, they are a wereshark. So they have an ability where when they bite somebody, they can choose to embed one of their teeth inside the person, and they can then track that individual using their teeth. So this individual sent me a downtime saying, hey, I want to go ahead and, as a downtime action, try to track down where this person is. And that was simply it. It was just a sentence that they want to track the individual who has one of the teeth embedded in them, because it was a combat with an adversary and they ended up getting away. So he just wanted to find out who these guys were, where they were based out of, and it was brilliant. So I responded with the downtime, gave him the location, and at the next game he was able to say, hey, let's go check out these guys. I found out where their base of operations is. So that's just an example of an investigation downtime action. The next one is patrolling. So whether you're a vampire or you're a werewolf, patrolling is important. Patrolling basically allows the mechanic here in the book is that it allows you to make it more difficult for someone to come do something to your territory. So say as a vampire you've been awarded a city block as your domain, and one of your rivals is trying to lower the property values in your domain. So maybe they hired some graffiti artists as a downtime action to come in and start, tagging up your buildings to drop the property values. If you spend a patrol action, you then make that more difficult for them. So they now have to spend an additional downtime action in order to have their plan go off without a hitch. So that's basically the basic mechanic of it here from the book. I also use patrolling actions as kind of a catch-all, just saying, hey, I don't want to be caught off surprise, I don't want to be caught off guard, I don't want any surprises. So sometimes people will send me a downtime action saying they're patrolling their territory or their domain, depending on if you're a werewolf or a vampire. And I'll give them a little nugget. Maybe there's an epidemic of vampires that are being embraced and just released out into the city with basically being a threat because they don't know what they are and they're just out there wild and hungry. So, as an example, I had a player who submitted a downtime action. They were patrolling, and I basically said, "Hey, you ran across this teenage girl who was a vampire, but she had no clue who embraced her. She was thirsty and just kind of an overall security threat to vampires. So she then dealt with the situation accordingly. But that's just an idea of something else that the storyteller can do. They could throw you little morsels or tidbits. Say there's a citywide situation that's affecting everyone. Say crime's up in the city. Somebody's patrolling might end up, having some thugs trying to mug them. Whatever the case might be, it's a great way to seed overall setting issues into a character's personal story. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention on the feeding part. So for werewolves, they do feed. Obviously, they're more beast than anything. So they can take a downtime action to go hunt and feed deer or whatever the case might be. But primarily, they would basically be recharging their gnosis. So you would just basically submit a downtime action saying, "Hey, I'm spending time at the Cairn Heart, trying to, or the Shard Heart, trying to replenish their spiritual energy." So their energy is called gnosis, which allows them to activate their gifts and their abilities. So same concept. If you spend a downtime action recharging, you come in at full gnosis. Otherwise, you're at half gnosis. So. Then the final one it has on here is Beyond Your Means. Basically, this allows you to acquire anything that you might need or want that maybe your character can't afford. So say your character only has one resource dot, you're barely scraping by. You got a tiny apartment, may have a tiny moped or something to get around town, but maybe you're tired of that and you want a vehicle that you can drive around that's reliable. You can use a Beyond Your Means action to go ahead and acquire that. And this is acquiring it in a way that is mostly legit or legal. So maybe you pick up some spare work, get a loan, whatever the case might be, do a favor for someone, or something of that nature. Basically, you figure out a way to acquire said object or item so that you can have it without just outright stealing it. Theft is... So it describes here that theft is not a downtime. So if you want to steal something that, that would be more of a side scene, or maybe you could do it at game session. Take the storyteller aside, say, "Hey, I want to go steal a car, smash the window, just drive off with it." There's tests we can do to make that happen. So this is more of trying to acquire it so that, it's yours. You can use it repeatedly and nobody's really going to ask questions. So that's Beyond Your Means. I think the only ones that are not here in the vampire book, there's one in the werewolf book that is not mentioned here, which is Lend Aid. This allows you to help an ally or give a PC an action. So lending aid, basically, say you have allies who... Because allies aren't like indentured servants who will do everything you want them to do. So allies could be like a local biker gang that you're friends with and you hang out with and maybe have some drinks with every once in a while. but you need them to rough somebody up for you. So they say, sure, we'll rough somebody up for you, but after we do the job, we need to get together and you need to buy us a couple cases of beer. So that would be lend aid. You could use a downtime action to, hang out with them one night, acquire enough alcohol for them all to drink, and you're kind of scratching their back for them scratching yours. At the same time, you could use lend aid to give a PC an action. Sometimes characters are so busy, especially if they have a city position. They have duties they have to perform around the city, tasks they need to attend to, and maybe they just can't get to everything. So they might lean on you and ask a favor for you to come in and help them out with a certain task. That's where you would step in with the lend aid downtime action. We also have one that's kind of a homebrew downtime action. So I'm going to go over that now. Let's see here. So the homebrew downtime action of lay low. In our game, we were playing with the heat mechanic out of Blades in the Dark, tabletop role-playing game, where basically if you attract attention from various organizations, you can become wanted by them. So basically the way the mechanic works is every 9 points of heat that you acquire from an organization gives you a wanted level, and there's up to 4 wanted levels. And the more wanted levels you have, the more competent the adversaries are that they're going to send after you. So, as a result, you need to reduce that heat on you. Wanted levels are way more difficult to remove, but you can use a downtime action to reduce the heat on you from an organization by using the lay low downtime action. You can choose to have your character lay low as a downtime action, and basically it just represents them, hey, staying at home, staying out of the public, trying not to mess with that organization, or maybe even it could involve you creating a diversion. Maybe, you disguise someone such as yourself and have them go out and wreak havoc on this organization so that they kind of get their eyes off of you. Maybe they capture that person, realize, oh, this is just a normal guy, and they let you go. Let that guy go. And that's easily done with like local police, things of that nature. Obviously, supernatural threats are going to be a little more wary, and they're going to investigate a little more. But just to give you an idea, so you can use lay low to reduce your heat score by 1 point, hopefully avoiding that wanted level. Once you have a wanted level, you can't remove the wanted level unless you satisfy that organization and they decide they don't want to hunt you down anymore. But say you have like 1 wanted level and 2 dots of heat, you can spend 2 downtime actions to remove the 2 dots of heat, so you now only have the 1 wanted level. So that's an example of laying low. And there's also just miscellaneous downtime actions. There may be something you want to do that isn't on this list or we didn't mention here. Feel free to send it in as a downtime action. We can definitely work out how that mechanic's going to work, and I will give you a response if I need any tests. But don't feel restricted by these examples. They're just examples, and feel free to get as creative as you would like. So now that we've covered the different types of downtime actions, the final thing is to go over how to submit those. So you can submit downtime actions to me by email. It is widely available on the Facebook page. I think I just made a post last week about it. SpanishToreador@gmail.com. We also have deadlines for downtime actions. Generally, I'll set a deadline usually about a week before the following game. or say we have our game at the beginning of the month, I'll just set the deadline at the end of that month. So you have several weeks to get your downtime actions in. My recommendation would be to submit them as close to after your game session as possible, so everything's fresh in your mind. You know what your goals are that you need to accomplish and what you're going to focus on. I will usually respond once I have, a good number of downtime actions in my inbox. Then I'll go ahead and get those responded to about a week outside of game, just because that's when I'm prepping for the next session. Then I can have everything fresh in my mind as far as what the players did as a downtime action, and I can then try to weave those things into the next game session. So that's my line of thinking. Different storytellers will do things differently. That's just how I work. But that pretty much covers downtime actions. If you ever have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I would be glad to give you tips and kind of help you if you're struggling on what to do with your downtimes. But the downtime actions can be very good for advancing story. Okay, so here we have an example downtime that I'm going to do. If you got the information you need, you can shut the video down. But if you want to kind of see an example of how to submit a downtime, here I have a downtime set up for the NPC Prince of the City, Demetrius Zadimus, aka the Grey Worm. He is of Clan Nosferatu, and he has 4 dots in computer skill. So as you can see, he gets his base 3 downtime actions, and he then has 4 additional downtime actions as well. This isn't a requirement, but me mentally, for my own sanity, I like to assign those computer skill actions to the, I tag them on the end. So I will try to generally keep to actions that would be viable to do over the computer. Obviously you're not gonna go graffiti somebody's territory with a computer action. That's kind of difficult. Now, if you have some influences in the underworld, then I could see that being done, because you could email, one of your influence people and have them do it for you. So we can figure that logic out there that way. But for my sanity, that's how I like to think of it. So, also feeding. Feeding is kind of hard to do by computer, but that's just me. So, we will say that the prince, he will feed. That's his top priority, because he wants to be full on blood. He is a pretender elder, so he wants to make sure he's got plenty of blood to power his abilities. Second downtime action will be to patrol. Let's see, he'll patrol his block. So, I don't think in character anybody knows what part of the city he actually lives in as of yet, but that's what he's going to do. He's going to patrol his block, so that if anybody does try to do anything to his haven, if they do know where it is, then he's going to make it harder on them. Third downtime action. Let's see here. He is going to investigate. Who stole his money and drugs? As the prince is heavily involved in Omaha's Underworld, and he had a drug deal go bad in the past, at the beginning of Chronicle back in November, and he is still trying to figure out who has his money and his drugs. So he's going to try to get some more leads on that. And you know what? We could probably take this action and we'll put it down here. Not that it's bottom priority, just because that is something that he could do. Oh, wow. It's really going to do me like that. So, anyway, so he will investigate who stole his money and drugs. He will computer, aka phone. He will make some phone calls and try to get some more details on who has his stuff. Another downtime he will take is let's see. He will he will craft. He likes to work on vehicles, so we will say that he will upgrade his SUV to be bulletproof. And I just did it again. So it's not something you can do on computers, so we'll make that his physical action. Okay, so he has 3 more computer skill actions that he can take. He has resources 5, so very little is beyond his means. So that probably is not... Oh, he will lay low. He's got some heat on him, so he will lay low from rival drug gangs that he is in conflict with. And he will investigate the local Sabbat living in his city. He has made an arrangement to have them stay in a particular housing complex, so he can keep an eye on them. And he has video surveillance, so he is keeping an eye on them to make sure they're not doing anything they shouldn't be doing. So, got to keep an eye on those pesky Sabbat, make sure they don't get out of hand, especially since they're promising to get on the path of humanity and fall in line with Camarilla law. 6, he will attempt to... This is going to be one of those miscellaneous ones that doesn't really fall into any category. But ever since the humans found out that vampires exist, it's been a lot harder for the Camarilla to communicate with each other because they're trying to keep from being discovered by the human hunters, human government organizations, and human corporations. So he will attempt to contact the Nosferatu Justicar, who owes him a boon. So he's going to try to reach out to this Nosferatu Justicar to get that boon repaid. Maybe he needs those Sabbat to get roughed up a little bit, whatever the case might be. But he's going to try to reach out through his online contacts and see if he can get a hold of them. So there you have it. We have 7 downtime actions for the Prince, Demetrius Zadimus. He's getting some stuff done. So that way next game session, he will get a response back on all of these actions. Obviously, he'll have full blood, so he won't have to worry about that. If anybody did try to attack him, he's going to make it 1 action more expensive to do so. He will then be able to add the, I believe, hardened, or I believe I forgot what the trait is, but he can add a trait to his SUV equipment card that he will have. He will be able to reduce his heat by 1. He will hopefully get a juicy morsel of information as far as what the Sabbat in his city are doing. And if they need to get put in line, he can send that Justicar and probably his sheriff and the Scourge to go down and toss some bodies around to get them back in line. But he'll find out if he needs to go that far. And then he can also get another lead on who took his money and his drugs from that bad drug deal that went down back in November. So that's where he's at. This was an example of downtimes. If you have any questions on this, feel free to reach out to me. Otherwise, we will see you on the flip side.